it feels
Except Congress does not enact policy based on the will of the people. That's a fact. It's usually the will of the wealthy and the elite, which is what the Founding Fathers intended. Was the plutonomy article from Citibank 14 years ago, where Citibank drafted this internal paper to be shared with a bunch of financial interests saying the United States is not a democracy. It is a plutonomy where the wealthy control the political class and the political class enacts the interests of the wealthy elite.
still, essentially, are you opposed to America being a democracy?
Again, it depends on what you mean by democracy.
A transfer of the people of power to an elected official who then does their will. He would never do, but say he does.
I'd vote for him.
Jesus, me too. I would vote.
Yeah, me too.
I would vote the fuck for Jesus. Okay. The question is, Jesus also will have to have a carry.
If we're trying to figure out why men are leaving the left, you know, we're not able to have a conversation like this with most people on the left, to be honest. You know, the people that, and currently there's no evidence that shows that the Democratic Party is interested.
Look, I know what you're thinking when you see this title, Another Democracy versus Republic Debate. But hold on, because what happens here is actually wild. Tim Pool sits down with Kyla Turner, and what starts as a semantic argument about whether America is a democracy or a republic turns into something way bigger. Turner tries to pull the classic leftist move. We're a democracy, it's all semantics, the founders didn't even know what liberal democracy meant, and Tim just systematically dismantles it. But here's where it gets interesting. They actually start agreeing on something massive: money in politics, corporate control, the whole system being rigged. And then Turner admits something I genuinely did not expect to hear from someone on the left. The Democratic Party won't even have this conversation. Their own people won't show up to debate. They want appearance fees just to talk. Meanwhile, the right is flooding in saying, let's go. You need to see how this plays out. Let's get into it.
We are a democracy.
The United States is a constitutional republic with democratically elected representatives.
Do you know why the founders said a constitutional republic? Because a liberal democracy wasn't a term that was invented yet.
Liberal democracy is like a semantic term historically to represent countries that function with some kind of electoral
So is a
representative.
constitutional republic, because if you look back at the constitutional republic and what they describe, it later became what we know now as a liberal democracy. The reason that the founding fathers, like Hamilton and Madison, who are the people writing on this in the like original letters, the reason that they explicitly talk about not using the word democracy is because when they think of democracy, they thought of the Greeks, and they're like, well, we don't want some like crazy, like just vote by population democracy. We don't like that thing. We want something that is more like essentially what we have now, which is a liberal democracy.
Republicanism.
Yeah, where
various jurisdictions who send an elected representative to go and represent the interests of the area.
Sure. The issue is that like we just do have a democracy. Like we're fundamentally, if in every way we're functioning as a democracy, we're acting as a democracy, we're voting, then like at some point we have to call the duck a duck. Like it feels
Except Congress does not enact policy based on the will of the people. That's a fact. It's usually the will of the wealthy and the elite, which is what the Founding Fathers intended, which is why the 17th Amendment got ratified in the early 1900s, because the original idea of how senators were sent to Congress at the federal level was that your state reps would choose to represent the state. So you would vote for a state rep who would then, in their own council, say, we want our state senator to be that guy over there, and no one had a say in it. So in the early 1900s, they were like, hey, the problem is they're sending cronies, so we're going to change this. And I don't actually agree. I think they did it because it allowed the subversion of state choice, state authority. But the general idea among the Founding Fathers was that we needed, quote, better men to decide for the public, not a democracy.
Right. This is why you have the Electoral College in the first place. This is why I tell people vote in your primaries. But this is a democracy, right? Just because you vote for an elected and then that elected gets to make decisions on your behalf, this is still fundamentally, in every way, democracy, right? The function of a democracy is that the will of the people transfer their authority and their power to an elect who then speaks for them. And we can talk about whether or not the people who speak for them do a good enough job. You and I would probably agree a lot because I'm very critical of it.
Do you think in the past 100 years, the U.S. government has actually enacted policies at the will of the American people?
By and large, yes.
I think the data shows us that the answer is no, they don't. There was the plutonomy article from Citibank 14 years ago, where Citibank drafted this internal paper to be shared with a bunch of financial interests saying the United States is not a democracy. It is a plutonomy where the wealthy control the political class and the political class enacts the interests of the wealthy elite. I think that's actually fascinating because I would assume the left position is largely that, yeah, politicians don't represent our interests. They represent the lobbyists, the corporations.
This is because you were
military-industrial
mixing me
complex.
up with like far left people.
I'm not mixing you up. I'm saying it's interesting that you would assert that when the left liberal, Occupy Wall Street, the moderate, largely view corporations as unduly influencing our political system.
I think most people would agree, though. Like, the issue is that this is my issue with leftists too. Just because there is corruption, it doesn't mean that that democracy isn't occurring necessarily. We can definitely say corruption is happening and there's something that needs to be done about it. But essentially, my question would be, what's the alternative? Do you want America not to be a democracy?
Well, I guess the issue is how you define the phrase democracy, right?
Do you want to take away people's right to vote?
Again, all people everywhere all the time. Do we want to put certain restrictions on voting? Do we want to open up voting to literally
I'm asking
anybody?
you. I genuinely, I don't know your position.
Right. So when you say, do you want to take away people's right to vote? What's going to happen is there's going to be a semantic manipulation on the left where they say people means everyone. And then what you'll get on the right is something like they'll reference Starship Troopers, service guarantees citizenship.
Yeah, true,
right? Where it's like
based.
when you allow people who are not citizens to vote, which some jurisdictions are doing, like in California, New York, they're trying, you are going to get a representation of non-citizens. And what are the non-citizens going to vote for? They're going to vote for their families back home. Why wouldn't they? I expect them to vote for their families, right?
Sure. And I would agree that there should be like some limits on who gets to vote, right? This is why I think citizenship is a really good standard by which who gets to vote, right? There's also even a good question like, should expats get to vote? If you haven't been in the country for 30 years, even though you're still a citizen, what's your like...
You pay taxes.
You pay taxes, yeah. Americans do. Expat Americans do. Canadian... Should I be voting as a Canadian if I haven't been in my country for like 20 years because we don't have to pay taxes to Canada? I don't know the answer to this, right? So I'm willing to grant that there should be limitations to who votes. My question to you is still, essentially,
Okay, so I gotta pause this right here because this is legitimately one of the most interesting moments I've seen in a political discussion in a while. And I don't say that lightly. Turner just spent 3 minutes explaining carry committees, super PACs, unlimited dark money donations, the whole corrupt system. And here's what's wild. Tim Pool is sitting there nodding because they actually agree. Both of them are sitting here saying the same thing. The system is captured. Politicians don't represent the people. They represent whoever writes the biggest check. Corporate interests run everything. This is the leftist critique that actually makes sense when they're being honest about it. But watch what happens next, because this is where it all falls apart for the left. Tim asks the obvious question. If you understand this, if you see the corruption, if you know money controls everything, why is the left not running candidates who actually represent this position? Why are the people the Democratic Party is elevating, the Parkers, the Harry Sissons, the Brooklyn Dads, why are they all establishment shills? Why is every single person they platform someone who defends the exact system Turner just spent 3 minutes critiquing? And Turner's answer is devastating. Not because of what he says, but because of what he admits at the end of this section. The Democratic Party doesn't want this conversation. They don't want people like him. They don't want reformers. They don't want populists. They want to protect the machine. Meanwhile, and this is the part that should terrify the left, Tim says he can tweet who wants to debate culture war topics and get 500,000 responses from the right. Charlie Kirk texts him saying, let's find dates. The Krasensteins, and look, I'll give them credit here too. They're at least willing to show up. The Krasensteins say, we're in, let us know when. But the mainstream left, the people the Democratic Party is actually funding and promoting, they say, contact my agent and we'll give you our rates. Let that sink in for a second. The right is showing up for free because they actually believe what they're saying and they want to defend it. The left is demanding appearance fees because this is a job to them. This is a grift. They don't believe it. They're not passionate about it. They're collecting a check. This is exactly what I've been saying forever. The dissident right, the Tim Pools, the people building independent media, they're doing this because they genuinely think the system is broken and they want to fix it. The institutional left is doing this because it's a career move. And the men leaving the Democratic Party, they see it. They see who's actually willing to have the conversation and who's hiding behind agents and publicists. They see who's actually mad about corruption and who's just performing outrage for donations. Turner's not wrong about carry committees. He's not wrong about money corrupting politics. But the party he's defending won't even let him make that argument on their platforms. They'd rather elevate people who will protect the donors. That's the problem. And that's why they're hemorrhaging young men. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Does the left have anyone who's actually willing to show up and defend their positions without a paycheck attached? Because from what I'm seeing, it's a ghost town. All right, watch what Tim says next.
Being a democracy.
Again, it depends on what you mean by democracy.
A transfer of the people of power to an elected official who then does their will.
I love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you want that to look like?
Not like it looks now, to be completely honest.
That's fine, but what do you want it to look like?
Yeah, like a person goes for the people, has a conversation over what the representative bloc wants to see happen in their various political structures, be it at the state level, local, city, or otherwise.
Sure.
Those individuals go and then enact the will of their voter base and to the best interest they possibly could.
Without the pit stop at the NGOs and the lobbyists and all that stuff. Yeah.
Yep. And not having luxury steak dinners or being flown on private jets or going on boats and all that stuff.
Sure. Okay. So we should get money out of politics, like by and large. Okay. So I would totally agree with you. Like carry committees are the worst thing ever that happened. And the problem is that now we have a Moloch game, right? This is the big issue with politics is that when, and this is my biggest criticism of the carry committee, is that essentially just to make sure everyone is aware of like what a carry committee is and stuff like that.
Not aware.
Okay, just want to make sure. And it's fine, you don't need to know esoteric words. It's not a gotcha. So a carry committee is essentially what we call like a super PAC. It's usually going to be a combination of sometimes it'll be a nonprofit or a charity, a C4 and a C3. And sometimes there'll be some other little fun things thrown in there, but that's essentially what it is. And this combination of things allows infinite donations, some of them, most of them, which can be hidden into who does it because they would be a C3, right? Which means that they're bipartisan. And then they usually are not bipartisan. And this is true on both sides, just so it's clear. Both sides are doing this. So carry committees get introduced. And the problem now is that if you want to run for federal office ever, good luck without a carry committee. You must participate in the evil thing that you despise, because if you don't, you will be limited in how much money you can raise. And the reality is that money does make elections work, which is gross, but how are you going to get your ads out? How are you going to pay for your tour? How are you going to pay for your staffers? How are you going to pay for your flyers, right? So money has to be infused to some degree in a democracy.
There's no way not to do it.
Exactly. And so then this issue goes, okay, well, if everyone, even if they want to play the game, even if we've got Jesus, okay, Jesus comes down and he's going to become a politician, which I would argue he would never do. But say he does.
I'd vote for him.
Jesus, me too. I would vote.
Me too.
I would vote the fuck for Jesus. Okay. The question is, Jesus also will have to have a carry committee. This is the Moloch's game, where essentially once the bad thing is in play, if you don't participate, you don't get to play at all. And so now we have this issue where we already have a bad thing. In this case, just the carry committee, and both sides have to participate. And the issue is now there's no incentive to get rid of it because nobody's going to canvass and like promote themselves on saying I'm anti-carry committee, because if they do, they will get no funding.
So, isn't this kind of part of the problem though? Like if we're trying to figure out why men are leaving the left, we're not able to have a conversation like this with most people on the left, to be honest. The people that, and currently there's no evidence that shows that the Democratic Party is interested in having people like that represent them. The people that they're supporting, the Parkers, the Harry Sissons, the Deans, all that stuff. And then this just recently, they put up that lady Olivia Giuliani or whatever that was going around on X. There's no evidence that they're even willing to concede on any of their positions.
Let me tell you. So we did a live event for the show, and we're planning a series of live show. That was our pilot. We're trying to figure out how it works. I can tweet who wants to come and debate on the culture war, and on the right, you'll get 500,000 responses. I'll get a text from Charlie Kirk saying, I'd love to find some dates that work. On the left, they say, contact my agent and we'll give you our rates. Then if a few people I'll give credit to, the Krasensteins, as much as, there's contention between our opinions.
They're fun to make fun of.
Absolutely. But I respect that they've come on the show. They've said, let us know when you have dates. We'd love to be a part of the conversation. And very few people want to do these things.
So let's talk about what just happened here, because this is one of those rare debates where both people are somewhat reasonable, and that actually makes the outcome even more damning for one side. Tim Pool won this decisively, not because he yelled louder or pulled gotchas. He won because he forced Kyla Turner to admit the thing the left doesn't want you to know. They don't actually want to have these conversations. They don't want debate. They don't want to defend their positions in the marketplace of ideas. They want compliance. They want their people to stay in line, repeat the talking points, collect the check, and shut up. Turner seems like a smart guy. He clearly understands the corruption in the system. He can articulate the problems with carry committees and dark money better than most people. And you know what? On that specific issue, I think he and Tim basically agree. The system is rigged. Politicians serve donors, not voters. That's a fact. But here's where the left loses. Turner can see the problem. He can describe the problem, but his party refuses to do anything about it because the Democratic establishment benefits from the exact corruption he's criticizing. They're not going to run populist reformers. They're going to run people who will protect the machine. And when people like Turner try to have an honest conversation about it, they get sidelined. Meanwhile, the people the party does elevate, the grifters, the influencers, the blue check reply guys, they're all demanding appearance fees to show up and defend their positions. You know what that tells me? They don't believe what they're saying. Because if you genuinely believe you're right, you show up, you make the argument, you defend your worldview. The right does that, Tim does that, Charlie Kirk does that, the Krasensteins, and again, credit where it's due, they do that. But the institutional left, radio silence unless there's a check involved. And this is why men are leaving the Democratic Party in droves. Because they can see who's actually willing to stand behind their beliefs and who's just playing a character for money. They can see who wants to have the conversation and who wants to shut it down. Turner seems like he wants to have the conversation, but his party doesn't. And until that changes, they're going to keep losing. If you made it this far, do me a favor. Like this video, share it. Subscribe to MB if you haven't already. Drop a comment and let me know. Do you think the left has anyone who's willing to actually defend their positions in long-form debate without a paycheck? Or is it all just a grift at this point? Stay sharp. I'll see you in the next one.